Oh, it's that time of the year where everybody dusts off their best Jim White impression and brags about their ability to tell you what's not happening on transfer deadline day. Welcome along to Thursday morning's OTBAM. We're here with you all the way until 9:30 this morning. How are you, Owen?
I'm very well.
You were staring up at the screen there like, we're very washed out. Is that the issue?
Well, yeah, I hadn't realised this. I'm like,
there's new lights on, is there?
Am I tripping or something? I'm not quite sure, but everything looks extremely bright here this morning.
We're not actually here, Owen.
This is a vivid dream, I think, is the technical term. But yeah, as you're saying, everybody...
I think that one over there is the problem, is it? That light over there?
Well, I'm not sure. It does look sort of... we've got kind of an extra sense of holiness about us this morning, really.
Or it's Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, who knows?
This is how they punish people. This and making people watch transfer deadline day videos all day. From 2011, perhaps.
Well, from 2011, I've been doing it all morning, and you know, people often ask you, what's your favourite sporting memory? Is it like an All-Ireland final? Is it somebody winning the Premier League? Is it, you know, Ireland winning a Grand Slam? For me, it's transfer deadline day in January 2011 as what I deem to be the greatest sporting moment of all time, because it was just hours and hours and hours of pure theatre on Sky Sports. And this was before Sky Sports, you know, devolved into the smut that we got to know, such as, you know, dildos being placed in reporters' ears and things like that. This was when transfer deadline day had class and it had excitement and it had a lot of guts and a lot of glory about it. And I was just looking back at some of the deals from transfer day 2011. So 8 years ago on this very day, the day started off in particularly dramatic fashion. So at around 9:30, the BBC were reporting that at the Melwood training ground in Liverpool, Fernando Torres had shown up. So straight away at 9:30, the thing had got the ball rolling. But there was to be done deals done early in the morning that were going to get the excitement up and running. So at 9:59, Nottingham Forest's quest for a full-back is over. They have signed Paul Konchesky on loan from Liverpool.
Wow.
Deal number one.
Well, Liverpool fans were actually delighted with that. That was like a moment where there was we are not going to tolerate any shit from this point on. We are getting rid of Paul Konchesky. Woohoo!
It was a great moment for Liverpool fans, and a couple of moments after that, Torres gets into a helicopter. So things are starting to ratchet up a small bit from a Liverpool perspective. We'll skip on to the afternoon. It was a quiet morning after that. At 3:05, this is when transfer deadline day really kicks off, because Sunderland midfielder Andy Reid has joined Blackpool for an undisclosed fee. And the BBC website asks, could this potentially be a replacement for Charlie Adam, who's been linked with a number of clubs on that day? Then at 3:10, we've got some more Irish interest. As reported, Bristol City have completed the loan signing of Wolves striker Andy Keogh. He goes to Ashton Gate for 3 months. At 4:15 then, things kind of ratchet up a small bit in terms of big Premier League moves. Birmingham confirmed the signing of a 26-year-old Nigerian striker called Obafemi Martins on a 6-month loan deal from Ruben Kazan. Things then start to get into the rumour mill, and we don't know if some of these things are going to happen or not. And Dan Rowan of the BBC reports that Charlie Adam is on his way to Liverpool. More details on that when he gets it. Then, at 7:25, the big one, Chelsea and Liverpool agree a fee for Fernando Torres, and the player is now awaiting a medical. And at the same time, reports in Portugal start to emerge that Chelsea are interested in completing a £25 million deal for a guy called David Luiz. Before all that starts to get sorted out, before we actually know if he's actually signed, sealed and delivered, at 8:07, Stephen Ireland completes his loan move until the end of the season from Aston Villa to Newcastle. Did you remember that Stephen Ireland played for Newcastle?
Not really. I don't think he did he? Did he like play a game and then get injured, and then did he just end up back at Villa? He got from Villa to Stoke, so somehow he ends up back at...
That's the only... Well, it's one of only two Aston Villa mentions in transfer deadline day 2011. Of course, still then a heavy hitter at the top of the Premier League, or at least in the top half of the Premier League at that point. But at 8:25, we have an interesting development on transfer deadline day. I don't remember this. According to the BBC website, there's worrying developments for Chelsea fans. If what worries you is completely speculative chat and social networking sites, the word on the tweet is that Benfica have pulled David Luiz off the plane to London and say they are analysing Chelsea's offer for the centre-back. But then at 9:15, Liverpool confirmed the signing of Luis Suarez on a 5.5-year deal from Ajax. The Uruguayan, who they describe as 24 years old, will wear the number 7 shirt. Then at 9:10, Daniel Sturridge makes the move from Chelsea to Bolton until the end of the season, and Charles Nzogbia is linked with a last-ditch move to go to Newcastle United. That doesn't happen, nor does the Charlie Adam deal, but a big move does happen, and Eidur Gudjohnsen joins Fulham on loan until the end of the season from Stoke. And then we get into the last hour of transfer deadline day, and this is when it all happens, really. At 5:11, Liverpool confirmed that Andy Carroll has signed, and we get this picture of Andy Carroll. And we also get the picture the next day of Andy Carroll and Luis Suarez posing together beside King Kenny, which I think we can have a look at. There we go. A now infamous picture. In the meantime, Conor Salmon messes everything up. Wigan confirmed the signing of Conor Salmon on a 3.5-year deal from Kilmarnock. But back to the good stuff. Liverpool confirmed that Fernando Torres is now a Chelsea player, and Benfica released a statement to the stock exchange saying that David Luiz has joined for a fee of around £21 million plus Nemanja Matic. But it wouldn't be transfer deadline day without one final move.
Plus Nemanja Matic. 21 million plus Nemanja Matic.
Yeah, I know.
That's pretty expensive. Was Matic not playing at that stage? Was he playing anything? Was he from the reserves / under 23s, was it?
It must have been, and then he obviously
gets good.
Yeah, he gets good.
And they buy him back for 25 million. It's obviously just a carousel of cash.
That's all it is. That's all it was. Sloshing around. 29 minutes past 11, though. It's a final done deal of the day. Rangers have announced the signing of El Hadji Diouf from Blackburn after finalising a loan deal in the final stages of the transfer window. The other thing we had as well that day was one of Jack Wilshere's greatest tweets, which is now deleted, unfortunately, where he tweeted, "Breaking transfer news. I've just moved from the sofa to my bed." I don't know why he's deleted that. Maybe because he thought it would have been made him more injury prone.
Yeah. How many games do you think Stephen Ireland played for Newcastle?
8.
2.
2, wow.
A grand total of 49 minutes.
If you type in Stephen Ireland Newcastle into Google Images, which I naturally did this morning, you actually get a fair few images of him playing. So I was thinking to myself, God, I really did forget this fairly healthy amount of time he spent at Newcastle, but clearly that's not the case.
Well, that's what it looks like from Transfer Market. That's the information I'm getting.
I would trust Transfer Market.
2 appearances, yeah.
It's probably just a load of pictures from the one game.
How many for Aston Villa?
35?
58.
58.
Yeah, I think he was there 4 seasons.
That's a poor return, isn't it?
Not great.
No, not great whatsoever. So that was transfer deadline day in 2011. They don't make him like they used to. And it's weird because 2011, the world was in a worse financial place. Football was less grotesque. But maybe people were, more sensible about the idea that you need to do things a lot earlier in a transfer window. And January, as a transfer saga, just isn't a good thing to get yourself into.
I disagree. I think that it's a great thing to get yourself into. If you can get Luis Suarez, everything else you ever do on transfer deadline day is a success. You on balance, you still win. Like signing Luis Suarez, signing David Luiz was a great signing.
True.
Signing Fernando Torres for 50 million, not a great signing.
No, but
a complete bust.
Complete bust. But the transfer deadline day from a Chelsea perspective is probably successful, given the amount of money that they have to just throw away. And
well, if you think about that transfer deadline day, so they wasted 50 million on Torres, and then they gave Matic away so it was 17 million was what they initially offered, and then it went to 21 plus Matic. And then they have to spend 30 million to get Matic back, is it?
Something like that.
It's not a great day's business, is it?
Not a great. I don't think Roman Abramovich really cared too much, though.
They made 50 million from David Luiz and then got him back for half that. So, obviously that money wasn't paid.
I often think that if you have money like Roman Abramovich, you can kind of be like John Cleese in Rat Race and just sit there and have Jim White on all afternoon and just kind of make calls and watch helicopters run around, watch Dimitar Berbatov run around corridors and stuff like that. If I had that sort of money, that's exactly what I would do as a hobby on the last day of August and the last day of January.
Let's tell you what's coming up on the show today, because we've got a fairly busy show for you this afternoon. This morning. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl. Mike Carlson around about 9:10. Going to talk Liverpool from last night. Is the choke already on? Is it underway? Are we witnessing it in real time? 8:45 this morning, we're going to talk about that. Darren's going to join us around about 8:35 to talk through the sports news. Donnacha Ryan, going to talk to him around 8:15, and the sports pages. We'll get to the sports pages right now and on time for a change. Right, let's start with the Irish Times this morning. Schmidt, the back players who beat the All Blacks. Murray to return with Henshaw at fullback, likely to be the only other change. So now they have Nathan White in their team starting at number 3, but I presume that's just a typo. That would have been a much bigger story if Tadhg Furlong was out, right? So Rory Best, Cian Healy, Rory Best, Nathan White, it says in the Irish Times, but I presume that's not meant to be, that's Tadhg Furlong. It's Devin Toner, James Ryan, Peter Manny, Josh van der Fleer, CJ Stander, and on the bench, Jordan Larmour makes it, Joey Carberry and John Cooney. Also on the bench, Jordy Murphy, Ultan Delan, Andrew Porter, Jack McGrath and Sean Cronin, which is interesting because that means Delan has, sometimes the benches in these probable teams aren't right, but Quinn Roux seems to be a favourite of his, unless Roux picked up an injury, who knows.
Delan's been going pretty well for Connacht as well, resulting in a new contract there recently. So
he was on the bench for a big game over the Christmas period. I came off the bench and I was like, what is he just coming back from injury, or were they resting him, or is he on minutes? Maybe he's on minutes, I don't know.
Yeah, there's no question that Joe Schmidt is looking towards next year or the year after. You're probably looking at Untitled Chapter, because who knows when Devon Toner is going to need to be replaced on a full-time basis. But towards the World Cup, is he going to... I never would have thought that he would have leapfrogged Quinn Roux in Joe Schmidt's thinking before the World Cup.
Delan.
Yeah.
I think he's ultimately he's going to be a much better player in the long run, right?
Yes.
He's an explosive.
But Joe Schmidt, does he care about beyond this autumn?
I don't know. Do you remember how when Delan came on against England, there was some times where
2016, wasn't it?
Just the whole thing would move. You're like, you can see him having an impact on them all. I like that, you know.
It's a long time ago now at this point.
So we need a bit of Kerry bastardry in the team, don't we?
Well, for sure.
So slip up. We do not like this slip. Until Liverpool win a league, Steven Gerrard's slip is going to haunt them. Slip up. Liverpool failed to press home advantage at the top as Foxes snatched draw. The Ryan Line GAA chief Tom Ryan on Páirc Uí Chaoimh and Liam Miller controversy. We'll get into that in just a little while. Great piece from Jack Anderson today. Rules botch job made for GAA's winter of discontent. So he's pointing out that there was it wasn't just the Liam Miller fiasco. It was also the fact that a bunch of new rules were brought in and then kicked out before they were properly trialled without anybody actually having any important data on it. And also very pointedly making the case that the Director General generally comes out and tries to sell stuff like this. Pádraig Duffy came out when the Sky deal was done. He was front and centre making the points. This is why we're doing it. Whether or not you agreed with him, he was at least out front and centre doing it. But when it came to the rules, there was nobody making that case. Fully loaded England have no excuses. This is Lawrence Delalio saying that Eddie Jones will have no excuses if his fully loaded England team lose to Ireland in the Six Nations. And GAA bullied into hosting Miller games. So this was, again, Tom Ryan, the GAA Director General, his annual report, which will be officially presented to Annual Congress next month. He had a line about... He stated in his report he felt the GAA had been bullied into a course of action by a public backlash. Now, had been bullied into a course of action is in quotes, but had been bullied into a course of action that they would have done anyway.
Yeah, that's the full quote.
Yeah. Can you be bullied in something you're going to do anyway? I mean, I suppose you can. When your ma's like, you're on your way to do something, your ma tells you to do it anyway. You're like, I was going to do it anyway. That kind of stuff.
Well, exactly.
Why are you telling me to do the stuff I was going to do anyway? That kind of stuff.
I'm just trying to... whenever you speak like that to a parent, I don't think you're ever in any rush to actually do that thing. And it did strike me that the GAA weren't in any rush to make the Liam Miller testimonial match happen in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. There was... Remember there was a story that came out on the Friday saying it's going to happen? And then it was like, actually, no, this hasn't been confirmed. And then it took an extra few days to actually come around to the idea that this should actually happen. I don't know. There was a very simple out for all of this at the time, and when the GAA talk about it now, and it seems that route hasn't been taken. So clearly, Tom Ryan feels very strongly about how put out the GAA were by.
Yeah, he also says they're going to change the rules so that they can, on a case-by-case basis, it doesn't have to go to. One, they won't be the structure of the rule book won't prevent them from doing this in future, and two, there'll be a much easier kind of rubber stamping to allow. I don't know if it's individual county boards to do it, but certainly maybe Central Council will be able to make decisions on cases like this. So it's like these rules don't work. We're going to change them. We were bullied, but then on the news with Marty Morrissey last night, he said bullied was a strong word. Which isn't, you put it in, you kind of have to stand over it. No?
It's a very strong word, and when you're writing it out, it's a deliberate choice of words. So, not sure why he wrote back on that one.
So here is the Irish Independent. Henshaw set for fullback as Van der Fleer gets the nod. So there is a consensus forming about what this team is going to be. Rory doesn't name the bench here. He says it's exactly the same team, except we're Ty Furlong in the Independence team this morning. Neil Francis, petulant Jones has reached point of no return with disgruntled England. I'm just a little bit wary of writing off Eddie Jones to the point where we're like, he's just a comic book, not even a supervillain anymore, just one of those extra baddies in the background. There's Joker and Riddler and he's Croc or somebody who you don't really know.
No, I think he's a baddie hiding in plain sight, where the baddie has had such a downward spiral that the baddie is no longer a threat, and then suddenly he is a threat.
Harvey Dent.
Exactly.
Ryan insists GAA will resist efforts to apply conditions to stadium grants. This was the other side of that whole conversation where Shane Rossett apparently said, look, it's public money that went into Páirc Uí Chaoimh. They should be opening this for a charity event in Cork, and apparently the GAA were very upset about that. Brendan Griffin apparently had also said that he would tighten up financial arrangements so that grant-aided projects should be available to all sports. That's something we'll have to insist upon, said Shane Ross at the time. And the GAA apparently are going to resist any attempts. There was an inference at the time that the GAA should be under some moral, if not legal, compulsion to allow the use of our pitches for other sports because the association or the specific pitch had received public funding. Any funding we receive is and should continue to be predicated solely on the intrinsic value of Gaelic games. I mean, that's an interesting case, and maybe that is the case. Maybe GAA clubs should be making the case that they of themselves are worthy of grants, but the corollary to that is that there's a limited pot of money and that the government has stated that they want to give multi-function community organisations money ahead of any individual sport. And so that, you can see there being tension there into the future. That's not to say that individual GAA clubs and projects aren't of course absolutely worthy of funding, but we've got too many stadiums in the country that are lying mostly idle for large portions of the year and that aren't used properly.
And one of them is down in Cork at the moment. There's also a big vagueness around what the actual figure is there, and Tom Ryan didn't exactly help clear that up yesterday. He says it's somewhere in between 85 million and 110 million euro. At least that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah, at least he had some details. There's like 4 separate things that they need to sort out. There's a tax issue, there's a mediation dispute with a contractor, and there's a couple of other things as well that he said that is the reason for the inexactitude. But you would assume that good quality QSs and accountants and auditors can kind of say, well, that is that window and that is that window, because it's still a massive difference between the lower end and the upper end. So I don't know. Anyway, the Irish News for you this morning. Carol Kane has this story. This is also part of the report. GAA uncertain over extra cash for casement. The GAA says it doesn't know where the money will come from for any potential overspend in the new casement park, on which 10 million has already been spent. So the estimate for construction was put at 77.5 million. The GAA was contributing 15 and the other 60 was coming from the public purse. But obviously with the situation in the north, the snafu that it is at the moment, then who knows when the hell that's ever going to change. But again, a complete disaster for the GAA in the north, and in particular the GAA Belfast.
Back page of the Herald this morning is pool fail in Fox Hunt. League leaders unable to drive home advantage after City loss as they draw 1-1 with Leicester City. The back page of the Irish Daily Star meanwhile goes with cold feet. Klopp fumes as nervy pool missed chance. You've got a stadium set to pay for itself, says Carl O'Kane there on Tom Ryan's quotes. And confusion reigns as Neil exits. So Hibs last night insisted they didn't sack Neil Lennon, but the Irishman claims he did not resign from his job as gaffer. So what is clear here is that the 47-year-old has officially left his post along with assistant Gary Parker, and Gordon Strachan has declared he's not interested in replacing Lennon. Last night the club tried to clarify the managerial situation that has rumbled on since Friday, because that was when Lennon was suspended at the time. Instead, the 300-word club statement provided more questions than answers. They insisted that Lennon was a roaring success as Hibs gaffer with records smashed on and off the pitch, and that the manager had done nothing wrong during a team meeting last Friday. So it'll be interesting to see if that one gets cleared up. Back page of the Mirror is Klopp cold snap. Klopp boss frustrated as Reds miss a golden chance to lengthen lead at the top of the table, and the GAA set to open their grounds is what they're taking from Tom Ryan yesterday. Back of the Sun then is skating on thin ice. Cop slip up in bid to go 7 points clear and spark pitch sweep row. Blue don't know what you're doing, says the headline then regarding Bournemouth 4, Chelsea 0.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about this. Sorry, ball, it's great. 3 teams in it's amazing, great. Got the best out of these players. Fantastic. Yay. Whoa. That's basically Chelsea season in a 8-second sound effect.
Yeah, supporters chanting, you don't know what you're doing, as the Italian replaced new signing Gonzalo Higuain with Olivier Giroud is probably the nadir of any situation there. You bring in Higuain, you replace him with Giroud. He has kind of fessed up in the aftermath of the game, as Maurizio Sarri tends to do, and say, maybe I'm just incapable of motivating these players. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail is True Believers. English jibes won't put us off, insists Best. And GAA plan to settle stadium disputes. And you've also got a picture there of Harry Maguire, because Liverpool freeze as Foxes stand firm at Anfield.
You were saying off air this is the choke that you were waiting for. You were predicting Liverpool were going to choke. Liverpool are chokers. That's what you believe.
You've literally invented that conversation. If that's a way for you to introduce your own held belief that you desperately want Liverpool to choke, then that's fine.
I would like Liverpool to win the league to finally, give peace to the afflicted
Well, we can have this conversation again next year and it will still be funny. So I don't think we should be wanting.
You don't think they're going to choke? Or you think this is a choke?
I think that if they'd won last night and then subsequently lost the league, it would have been a choke. I think once you're in that 6-point radius in the month of January, I think it's still. I think the pursuer still has every chance, as Manchester City do. They will have to go on an extraordinary run, and I think what we saw 2 nights ago is an Achilles heel mentally that Manchester City have.
And do Liverpool now also have one?
I think they have.
Or should they have had a penalty and there should have been a red card and they got screwed last night and that's all that happened? And they'll come out of this going, we got screwed, don't worry about it. We're not going to get screwed every game and let's not leave it in the hands of the referees. Come on.
Potentially, but if they'd won that game last night, for example, the cliche would have been, oh, these are the type of games that champions win.
Yeah.
And
loads of those this season where they have won. There should have been a red card. Keita should have, penalty. Did he not dive properly? Is that what happened?
Well, he needs to take some tips from Mo Salah.
I mean, come on. Like, if you're in that dressing room and Keita doesn't go down when he's clearly getting tripped, afterwards everybody's going, get down! No?
Well, absolutely you are, given the way it currently is. But I think the Keita incident is also kind of a backup for what Mo Salah's been doing in recent weeks, where you've got to flop sometimes to actually get what you deserve. Which is unfortunate, but I wouldn't be blaming Salah too much for that. The Racing Post, I almost call it the Racing Post, like you do every morning. The Racing Post, finally, the back page goes with Men of Steel, Rugby League superheroes ready for battle in Betfred Super League. And the front of the Racing Post is stand down and balance, but Dublin Festival hopes high. I presume that's to do with the weather this weekend. Of course, it is a Dublin Racing Festival at Leopardstown this weekend. And,
yeah, weather's going to be good on Saturday. It's going to be clear, it's going to be cold, but it's going to be clear and crisp.
Yeah, clear and crisp, and it's very hopeful that the 2-day festival is going to go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say it's nailed on. It's going to go ahead. So we have a pair of tickets to Ireland against England to give away on OTBAM this morning with thanks to Glenisk. You can, very easy to enter this, just retweet or share the stream wherever you're watching on YouTube, on Facebook or on Twitter. Make sure you're following at OffTheBallAM on Twitter or at OffTheBall on Facebook, and you can tag whoever you're bringing in the comments, and we're going to announce the winner at the end of this morning's OTBAM. So you've got an hour and a half left to enter this. And you could be heading along to watch Ireland 42, England 6 on Saturday. That'd be good afternoon's work, wouldn't it?
It would. The 6 points would be a real craw in the tooth.
For us, then?
Well, for us to see.
Oh, no, two penalties. One early. It's 9-6 at half time, and then we just come out and blow them away.
Well, if the 2 penalties are given away by Robbie Henshaw running from full back and absolutely decking somebody, then I'll absolutely be happy with that.
All right, Board B have teamed up with Donnacha Ryan to launch their new campaign, Chicken, Make It Your Way. They're calling on everybody to spread their wings and experiment with new recipes and flavours with chicken. You can check out boardba.ie/quality chicken for some recipe inspiration. Here's Donnacha Ryan on England, chicken, and James Ryan.
Donnacha Ryan, you're very welcome back. How are you?
Yep, great, thank you.
You're not home for long?
Just today, and hopefully back on Friday to watch Ireland England on Saturday.
Yeah, that's the big one. You're here with thanks to Board B, as we can see on your polo shirt there, and the Chicken Make It Your Way campaign. I presume you eat a lot of chicken.
I do, yeah. I eat a lot of chicken. I think if you maybe about a minimum of 20 to 30 grams of protein in a meal. So for breakfast, lunch, and for dinner, I suppose like a normal diet, you probably wouldn't eat that much protein in the morning. So I'd mix it up with either eggs, but sometimes I'd have shredded chicken from the day before, or I'd have put a crock pot on during the week, and it does me for snacking during the week as well, and trying to create menus as well. It's great to Board B. The quality assured sign as well, they're getting on board, and it's great to be partnered with them. But I'm always looking for recipes as well. I've got a nice chicken goujon recipe now. It takes maybe 10-15 minutes to put together. So
go on, give it to us.
I'll give it to you. So basically, you can smash up your chicken, fill it, flatten it as much as you can, and then I cover it with clean film as well, and get a rolling pin and flatten it out. Get an egg and some 4 slices of brown bread. You can get your NutriBullet or whatever to blend it up, and then get some olive oil and smear it all into a bowl really, and salt and pepper, olive oil, egg, and then if your strips, then you put it on the oven at 240 degrees for 10 minutes, and it's a nice little snack as well. So if you're ever stuck for something nice and healthy, that's a good way to go.
And you'd give the seal of approval yourself?
Yeah, I have at least once every couple of weeks. Yeah, so just as a kind of a treat as well. But things like chicken noodle soup as well. all that kind of stuff. Because it's fantastic for us. Protein wise, it's great, no carbs, and it's very, very little fat in it as well. So it's basically perfect for us, and obviously carries a lot more nutrients as well. So trying to get lean as well. It's a struggle when you get older, but it's good.
Is it something that you always do yourself? Are you a big fan of cooking?
Before in college, I just wouldn't have had the time to invest in. But that's why those crock pots are great. You can just put a chicken breast, or you can cut them up, or even a whole full chicken into a pot. Leave it there for 8 hours, and it's really supper when you take it like 8 hours later on. It's already coming home from a day's training. Like I would have started training in college maybe at 6:30, 7 in the morning, and then you're gone all day. And then it's nice to come home to have a meal after you finish your studies and you've trained again that afternoon. So would have. Obviously, big part of being a professional is the fuel you actually put into your body, and for me, it was just the best sort of nutrients I could get into my body. So I do cook a lot, and yes, I suppose it's sometimes you're trying to break up the monotony of the boiled chicken pre-match meal that we get, and especially I'll be having boiled chicken and pasta, which is very, very boring. But it's plain eating for a day of the game. But during the week, it's a good time to experiment.
Yeah, I suppose when you move to France as well, you got to up your cuisine game a small bit.
You do. Yeah, they've. I wouldn't have been big into bread before. So, whereas when you see the queue out the door for bread, it's incredible. People queuing for bread. So,
yeah, it's no storm in Ireland.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Yeah, and yeah, it's great. It's great to go every day now. I've gone to routine of just getting a baguette. So it's probably my best used phrase in French at this stage now. So I'm very good at saying it. But it's class. And I suppose other French dishes. I would be. When I went over there initially, I just tried to expose myself as much to the French culture as possible. So I tried escargots and or frog's legs, and then I basically tried this local French a chef in Nice recommended. I told him I was over playing rugby, and in France, and he said, "Oh, you must try new dishes," and he recommended andouillette, which is a sausage. French delicacy, so an andouillette, so we brought it out, and basically it tasted like crap. So it wasn't very, very bad, but he kept coming back over to see what it was. Do you like it? And it's like, yeah, it's great. And it was like, Jesus. He said, "What's my mother's recipe?" It tastes like maybe your mother's toenail clippings or something. It was awful. But so I did a good enough job trying to hide it under the chair, and threw a few into a napkin and put it in my pocket, and threw it into the bin. But so anything to save your man's save a bit of blushes. But no, it's great. You kind of over France, you kind of finally learn how to eat a croissant without covering yourself full of crumbs. So you kind of learned those skills, which is basically just don't buy croissants. So
yeah. So that's the key.
That's the key. Yeah. So yeah. Otherwise, you're on the road to ruin.
It sounds like you're well equipped then to stay in France forever.
The language is still working on the English to get right for the French. So now French is getting a bit better slowly. But yeah, I really like France. Paris has been fantastic. Really enjoyed the experience. Lots of stuff to do, and it's really, really cool in Racing at the moment as well with the players we have, the people that are there, and it's just really just enjoying it. It's actually really great experience to be able to do.
Yeah, because there is such a mix of cultures in that Racing team as well at the moment. So you're all kind of in there, and you're all getting to know this alien city at the same time.
That's exactly, because rugby isn't that big in the north of France. So you have a lot of guys who are coming from all around France, and they don't really have your family or cousins or guys you went to school with social structure behind you, as you would have in Munster or Connacht or Leinster or Ulster. So the guys really do gel together an awful lot more, and then obviously the wives and girlfriends do as well, and with all the kids, which is great. So it does create a good family culture in the club. And to be fair, the president and all the staff that are in Racing, they do their best to try and create that culture by doing events together as well. And even though as players we train we're really sure maybe 6 days a week, so it is pretty full on. But it's as I say, it's an enjoyable experience.
Is there any player that you're particularly friendly with? Obviously, Simon would be the obvious one to say.
Trying to stay away from him. He's in my friend. We have French class now on Mondays and Wednesdays, so he's himself, myself, and Pat Lambie are in the honours class. But listen, Simon's come along.
Who's the star pupil?
Simon is, because his dad is French, so he understands a lot more words than I would. But but it's great to have, because he's great. It's great having him there as well, and he's great having him on the pitch as well. So it's good. I know, we'd want him off to be a good crack. Bernard Leroux is a great guy. He's been wrestling for a number of years. Henri Chavancy, Wayne Laurent, and Teddy Ibrahim, the 9 as well, the small 9. We all get on really, really well. So it's not like in Ireland, as I said, in before the Munster and Leinster and Connacht and Ulster, you'd have maybe 4 or 5 nicknames, and none of them would be complimentary at all. So, but over there, it's you don't really have that as much. But to be fair, everyone is looking out for each other, which is great, because everyone's going through the same sort of issues as well. So that's a good thing to have.
Yeah, it's interesting that the timing that you went over and the timing that Simon went over, and Simon's obviously been speaking about it this week because he's been mentioned in an Ireland context, and it is Six Nations Week, and he's saying that I don't think it would have been as blunt and cold as it has been in terms of his shutout from the Ireland team. Obviously, kind of he was. He had a few less caps. He was a bit younger going over and stuff like that, so maybe he expected it to be a little less of a shutout than it has been for him. Did you ever get that sense from him that he was kind of a little bit disappointed that it was blunt and cold in the way he was shut out from Ireland?
To be honest, I weirdly enough, I really haven't sat down and talked with him at all about it, that kind of stuff. Because he's always an optimistic guy anyway. So I really haven't really talked to him about it. All I kind of saying, look, you're really going to love this experience. Just watch, because he was initially talking about when he was talking about wanting to come to France and just sample something new. I said, look, you can. Yeah, there's a load of other nice clubs out there, but I said, look, to be fair, you're coming to Paris. Like, if you have an offer of a club from Paris, it's such a fantastic experience to have, and there's so much that goes on there as well. And that was pretty much it. And then just ever since then, really, we've you're just trying to figure out, okay, well, we've a day off on Thursday, a rarity, but what are you going to do? Where are we going to go? What are you going to do? Or what restaurant do you want to go to? And that's like, you're literally, it's hilarious, because you're trying to basically take contacts from chefs, because pass them on to each other so they can get bookings into places. But which is great, because just that's what it's about. It's just like, just as I said, you're in one of the best cities in the world, and we're so fortunate. And I think he's just making the most of playing there. And I'd say, look, he's a man that kind of goes day by day, and he's always very positive. Like, the club love him, they really do. They're mad, and all the supporters love him as well. And look, as something else happens down the line, I'm sure he'll adapt to it, and there's no fear of him anyway. But
we should talk about Ireland-England, of course, kicking off the Six Nations this Saturday afternoon. From your own perspective, it must be interesting looking at the likes of James Ryan and Devon Toner leading the way, obviously, in terms of the depth chart of second row. It would have been interesting to see how the likes of Tadhg Beirne and Ian Henderson would have performed. Are you concerned at all by the injuries in that second row at the moment, or do you think that it's in the more than capable hands of Quinn Roux should an injury happen?
Yeah, so I think Joe was really trying to look for a line-out caller to replace Dev in case if he got injured. Like, Dev is, you look at the quality. You mentioned the quality second rows that are there, but and I read an interview before about Devon that he had a unique set of skills. He was kind of joking about the taking thing, but he actually. He's right. Like, he's got experience of calling lineouts under pressure. Like, and he admitted himself he's had bad days as well, and he's learned from that. And that's the frustrating thing, I'd imagine, for Simon Easterby and Joe, that they'd love to get the other guys, James Ryan, I know he's called a couple of times, and Ian Henderson, more experience to call lineouts at that level. Like, and I know Hendy had got it in a bit in the November series. Was a bit frustrating against Argentina as well, but it's just that platform is pivotal for Joe to launch his attack off, and no better example is than the Jacob Stockdale try. So you don't win that line-up ball, or you don't have this line-outs done earlier on in the game that maybe Dev would have put together, then you don't do so well. And it's just, getting those experience for those line-out callers, because you are trying to, if you are an athlete that is performing, you can just concentrate on just running around the pitch and just hitting rucks, carrying ball, making tackles. There's no other science to it than that. But if you're having to do the strategy game as well, which Devin is familiar with, you're having to, so if you have a bad day at the line, it's kind of might take away from your own game as well. And then you're dipping into the thought process of, oh God, what am I going to do next, which takes away from the aggressive element of your game. And that's the frustrating thing of sometimes being a line-out caller as well, because you kind of just wish you could just go out and play and not have any to worry about anything else. But at the same time, it's a pivotal part of the game to make the guys around you look better, make the hooker look better and stuff. And I think Quinn Rue's doing a lot of he's calling line-outs over in Connacht, so he's getting good exposure to this. I think they're doing kind of the same similar systems that Ireland are doing, so it's good that Ty Byrne is doing the same system from Munster than he is at Ireland. He's had some good days. They're doing some good things there as well. And he's got two very good hookers, and Niall Scanlon and Reece Marshall as well. But it is important, because to have that depth, it's one thing. We have fantastic second rows. There's the depth. Even Ulton Delan now, he's an incredible player. But as I said, it's just that technical element of calling lineouts, and guys just literally having to sit down, have the discipline to literally look at videos upon videos sometimes and just understand scenarios and have a plan put in place.
How long will it take for James Ryan to become that top class lineout caller?
Oh, you'd love it was, if we're over the Six Nations, it'd be great. But unfortunately, it just takes time. The more games you do, the more scenarios you do, and then the relationships you've got to build with the guys around you and your hooker, because basically you're there to facilitate him and make him feel comfortable as well, and just to build that relationships. And that's when you look at Paul O'Connell was the best at doing that. He just knew the limitations of the hookers, and he knew what the capabilities of them, and between getting to know the person and sitting down and investing time, and some days it didn't go right as well, and he'd be the first to say it. He had a few bad days against Scotland, but he learned a lot from those days, and you learn more from those bad days than you do from winning. So hopefully sooner rather than later.
If you're looking at England this weekend, where can they hurt us in that area, in the line out, in the second row, maybe at the breakdown as well?
Yeah, so we so for instance, there's an example. Well, we played 2 years ago. When we played England here, we did a good day. We did a pretty okay day at the line-out that day, and Peter had a great day cleaning up on their line-out. And that was you could see Mario Toja was doing the calls that he's been given from the coach, but there's a massive element of player ownership as well, to own the analysis that you're doing, rather than getting the menu and just doing what you're told. So then you can kind of read scenarios on the pitch. This week Mario Toja, unbelievably athletic guy. Courtney Laws, he's put on a bit of timber as well. We've got, I know Billy Vunipola wouldn't be the key jumper ever to lift, but and you got obviously a toss with George Cruz and Joe Launchbury. Joe Launchbury has come back in from injury, and he had an okay game, I suppose, against Leinster for Wasps, but I think the way Saracens are going, they're leading Europe, and they're close top of the table in the Viva, and I'm sure they're probably going to go more Sarries boys, and as a unit, their familiarity of how they operate is probably better, so they would hope to put a bit of pressure on, but I think Devin is experienced enough with Simon Easterby as well, and obviously Bestie, he knows Bestie at this stage how he throws and how he operates as well. So I hope the lads with Peter as well, they'll be it'd be not much of an issue, I think.
You mentioned Courtney Lawes' extra timber there. How many chicken fillets will that take to actually put on that amount of muscle?
I'd say a significant amount, because it just takes a long time to put on muscle, easier to put on fat. It's just basically it just takes time. But like he's a serious athlete, and it'd be interesting to see whether they play him 6 or I told you 6, because I think because Ireland's breakdown is so good. If opposition teams start picking back row players that just contest heavily at the breakdown, it might disrupt Ireland, I think. But I don't. There's not many English players in the team that I think we can combat the Irish breakdown.
Can you see an upset happening this Saturday? Can you see Ireland getting beaten?
I imagine Joe would be putting that scenario of the last time they played England was in Twickenham and lifting the Grand Slam, and obviously Joe is fantastic at putting a scenario in play where to challenge to channel the focus of the players. Like he knows he has the system. Is just to get the mindset right, to get the focus right and the concentration, and because once Ireland can do that, and you can see what they did against New Zealand, is that you just saw a real measured performance. Just even some of the plays that weren't probably on some of the plays, but they literally, it's the players themselves made them work as well because they were so focused. And Joe, I think he's a seasoned pro at this stage. Kind of bemused by the way Eddie Jones is and his coaching staff are coming out and talking to the media. I don't know if they're trying to just ruffle feathers for whatever. It's kind of a bit desperate, I suppose, if they're doing that sort of stuff, because they should be really focusing on how their own house is in order, I think. But
it seems we've got into their heads a small bit.
I suppose the way it comes across in the media, maybe. I think the defence coach Mitchell was talking about Ireland being boring, but should look, if Ireland pumped them the weekend, which they're well capable of doing, he'll have a very unboring review on the Monday, Tuesday. So, but I think Ireland at the moment, they're so you can see Rob Kearney, he'll probably coming back in because he's tried and trusted. He knows the system. Joe knows that he knows the system and he's trustworthy there. So, and any guys, I think that would have been a hindrance. What would have been a hindrance for Ireland before was starting the Six Nations, was that level of how organised the players were from coming back, just getting together. And as the Six Nations grew, you could see the Irish team getting better because the more time they were able to spend together. And I think that's why he'll hook to stick to the guys he's used to, because they know how the systems and the plays that Joe wants them to do. We'll be able to be more efficient in Portugal last week and this week. So yeah, I think I'll be very hopeful for this weekend. I'd be very interested to see. Obviously, I'd like to see Dev do great, but as I said, from a work on, I suppose they need to find another line of colour, but it's probably not the game to start toying with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I don't think England is ever experimentation time.
No.
Donnacha, thanks many for coming in. Great to catch up, and best luck for the rest of the season.
Sure, thanks.
So Donnacha Ryan giving us some tips about lineouts. Oh, I'm mute. That's not good. It's Donnacha Ryan giving us some tips about lineouts and also how to cook chicken properly. We'll cut out the cooking chicken bit properly and put that up, and we can try out Donnacha Ryan's tasty chicken goujons.
Yeah, I am, of course, the culinary expert in off the ball at the moment after I did the one cooking piece we've ever done, so I'll be able to take that recipe and deliver it to perfection. Yeah.
I mean, he's another rugby player who looks like he could fit two of you inside him. Owen disappears and it's like, what on Sheehan?
It's like I'm not sure. We like that. That maybe instead of the chicken fillet question, it's how many of a smaller than average human being can you actually consume?
Right. Let's talk about the potential England 15, because the English hacks have all been coming up with their 15s, and they think that George Ford is going to start at 10. Not to a man, but there's definitely, I wouldn't call it a consensus, but a majority of the English rugby hacks think that George Ford will start at 10 with Owen Farrell at 12.
It seems that way, yeah. If you go through the Daily Telegraph rugby writers this morning, I think Ben Coles is the only one that has the dissenting voice that it might actually be Henry Slade and Manu Tuilagi in midfield with Owen Farrell pushed up.
Maybe he's got the good sources.
Maybe he's got the good sources, but There's also the likes of Daniel Schofield and Charlie Morgan listed amongst them as well, so they'd be kind of on the beat quite a bit in terms of English rugby. So this is
Charlie Morgan, 15, yeah.
But, like, let's just should we just go through this one? Like, I mean, Charlie Morgan is it's close to consensus in terms of the majority of picks here. His one is kind of along the mean line, if you can use that phrase. So if you start with the front row. Makavunipola, Jamie George and Kyle Sinclair.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just take that and put Ireland's front row up against them. England don't stand a prayer. They don't stand a prayer in that line.
The name of this segment is 5 Ways England Can Beat Ireland, Owen.
No, it's not. It's looking at England's team and re-evaluating our confidence. And do I need to check my own confidence and say I need to scale us back? Actually, no. After looking at that team, it's like we need to be more confident. If there's a potential that they fail pathetically in Dublin at the weekend,
It's
and
the
we
Six Nations.
pulverise them.
We've almost never pulverised them. There's been once.
Croke Park.
Yeah. Was there another time we actually pulverised them? There isn't really.
Last year, maybe the squadron doesn't represent it too much, but in that first half, we pulverised England on the way to the Grand Slam.
We did. Did they score a last-minute try to get? They did too. So it's finished.
There was a bit of gloss on it.
24-15 was the score last year, right? I'm fairly sure they scored a late try, right? Didn't they? After the game, we were basically celebrating. Ole, ole.
Yeah, the players were drinking pints while they ran in that try.
Yeah. The last time that we beat them by 10 points in 2015. There's a lot more big wins for them.
2015 to 2019.
2011.
This is the greatest rugby team we've ever had. We've just beaten the All Blacks. We've just come off the best year we've ever had in rugby. A lot, like, you can talk about injuries all you want, but the injury situation isn't actually that bad. We're in a pretty good place depth-wise. Maybe when it comes to the second row, we'll weaken in and around the 60th minute when inevitably...
Irrespective of the form of the two teams going into games, it is important to remember that no team wins these games. We certainly don't win them as a matter of course easily.
That's going to change this weekend. It's going to change this weekend. Like, name one line in that England team that is better than Ireland's.
Let me see their back row. Let's have a look.
The back row is going to be Vunipola at 8, Mark Wilson on one side of him, and Tom Curry on the other side of him.
Okay, so Curry's a kid, right?
Yeah, he's a good kid. Good kid. Got a bright future. But
20 years of age. This is going to be his Six Nations debut.
In the here and now, in the present, he's going to get eaten alive by Ireland's back row.
Yeah, okay. So no, second row with Toja and Cruz. If you're telling me Courtney Laws can't make the team, that's not a bad second row.
No, it could be Cruz. That is probably the one position that's furthest from consensus, I think, from Charlie Morgan's perspective. Launchbury or Laws could also go in there alongside Mara Itoje. So it's really between Cruz, Launchbury and Laws. Are any of them paired with Mara Itoje on the same level as James Ryan and Devin Toner? Say it.
It's not a million miles away. I think they're not a million miles away. I think that equally they could have really good games and be just as good as our second row.
Yeah.
I don't think it's beyond the bounds possibility for England. So let's talk ourselves into a way that England can actually win this game. You go line for line, it's the same conversation that we had 3 weeks ago when Brian Driscoll said one player, maybe two, one player really.
You're getting into the sort of, it depends what France shows up rounds here.
Well, I was just reading the match report from the time we beat them in the Aviva. We beat them 13-9 in 2017, and post-match, the quote on the BBC website, Dennis Hickey is quoted as saying, this is going to go down as one of the great Irish victories. That is a fantastic England team. England were going to win the Grand Slam.
Yeah.
And we stopped them winning the Grand Slam. We stopped them 13-9. It wasn't and we played well. And they didn't play well. So that's really where England should be considered. They've had this horrific 12-month period, potentially because a lot of injuries happened. Billy Vunipola wasn't playing, Tuilagi wasn't playing. There was no consistency of selection. I think it's a real thing, them not having players because of the Premiership. And I think that we shouldn't get carried away. The spread is 9 points in this, and I think that England are going to finish inside that. And I think that it's much closer to a 60-40 game than the 90-10 game that we're all strutting around.
Other than Billy Vunipola, who gets into that Ireland team, does Manu Tuilagi start in the midfield for us?
I mean, is Manu Tuilagi going to start ahead of Bundy? He ain't going to start. He ain't going to start ahead of any of the rest of our centres. So maybe, I think if Joe Schmidt is picking it and he has the pick of Ireland and England, it looks like a completely different thing because he's had them for 3 years in the system and taught them all how to play. Are we really saying that he couldn't do anything better with Courtney Laws and Itoje? The guile and athleticism of those players? Joe Schmidt could use that.
Probably, but
if Joe Schmidt was the England coach, who'd be favourites for this game?
If he was England coach for the same period that Eddie Jones has been, and Eddie Jones was Ireland manager for the same period that Joe Schmidt has been,
I would be predicting a 25-point victory for England.
Really?
Yeah.
So why aren't you predicting a 25-point victory for Ireland then?
Because it's England and we never beat them by 25 points.
So you think in just pure raw talent, England actually have a better team than Ireland?
I didn't say anything like that. Nowhere near that.
But you were saying that a 25-point win, if you reverse the coaches, it would be a 25-point win for England. That's a pretty substantial rubber stamping of the quality that England have in their squad. And you may be right. Maybe like bigger population, far more resources.
Yeah.
Maybe in terms of natural talent, they could be doing a lot better what they turn into their national team.
Well, I mean, it obviously depends on who the Ireland coach was. Well, you were saying Eddie Jones.
Eddie Jones, this way. So that kind of brings it down the other direction as well.
Yeah, totally.
In your view,
I don't think
I think Eddie Jones has been quickly written off here.
I don't think we would respond well to Eddie Jones in Ireland. No thanks.
Yeah, like we've obviously been quite offended as a nation by him talking about Johnny Sexton's health and stuff like that, which was a bit precious on our point of view, and like getting carried away with what one man says, and he clearly does it just as a bit of a joke.
I do think that we are chronically underrating England and forgetting that. Like, I don't know what the odds would have been or what the spread would have been before that game when we beat them 13-9, but I'm sure it was much closer. There's no way we were 9-point favourites going into that game. I'd say they were favourites potentially heading into that game.
Exactly, and
their team hasn't changed that much. Their team hasn't changed that much, and actually it's fitter now. It's potentially better now. They always do well in World Cup years, and I just think we should be careful.
I think we should be getting carried away right now, because ultimately, if you're right, at least we had these moments of hope before England put us back.
That's a good point. You're right. I apologise. Let's go book mental. Right, we caught up with the Irish rugby coach Adam Griggs ahead of Ireland's first game in the Six Nations on Friday night at 5 o'clock in Energy Park. Have a look.
Well, it's fine. I think people might not know, but I work with the sevens during the week as well. So while our 15s are all weekends because of the players' other commitments, I'm with the sevens group as well. So that's allowed me to see players training day in, day out, and then obviously what they do on the World Series is important to them as well. So myself and Anthony are in current dialogue. I have a desk right next to him. So we've had some pretty clear guidelines and know what's happening with those players as well. But you also can't underestimate what they can bring to a side, because while we've got some experience in our 15s, they get to compete against the high level athletes, each World Series. So they're more than capable of stepping into a 15s jersey as well.
Well, there's no risk that some of your key frontline players might be taken away for sevens, because you remember last year 3 of the most experienced players went off to play, and I can totally understand that was a World Cup qualification year, but do you still have, I suppose, first call for the Six Nations period over who you can play? I wouldn't say it's first call, but as I say, because myself and Anthony work so close, we've got it pretty clear of who will be a 15, who will be a regular in the 15s, and then who in those sevens can help bolster some of the positions that maybe we lack a little bit of depth in.
Before that game, obviously, on Friday evening, there is a Legends game taking place at 5 o'clock, at 7 o'clock in the RDS this Friday night. So the Ireland versus England Rugby Legends, it's kind of Ireland and Scotland versus England. So Scott Hastings is going to be donning a green jersey. I presume the Scots are all playing for Ireland. Anyway, it's all to help raise funds for Doddy Weir's Foundation. Ireland against England Legends, the 1st of February at the RDS. Kickoff is at 7 o'clock, and you can get tickets on Ticketmaster.ie. So Gordon Darcy, Malcolm O'Kelly, Shane Byrne, Joss Lucy, Mike Tyndall are all going to play for a number of rugby charities, including the Doddy Weir Foundation. And as I said, tickets are on sale at Ticketmaster.ie. 15 quid for general sale and tenner for students. So it should be a great night the night before the game. Darren, how are you?
Morning, Ger. Very well. It's not a good morning for Liverpool fans. They're frustrated this morning. The Reds missed the chance to move 7 points clear out the top of the Premier League table. Leicester held them to a 1-1 draw. Sadio Mane got Liverpool off to the perfect start with the opener inside 4 minutes. Leicester hit back through Harry Maguire, and the Foxes became the first club outside the top 6 to take points off the leaders this season, much to the annoyance of Jurgen Klopp, who was particularly frustrated by 2 refereeing decisions. Maguire equalised for Leicester, but had earlier escaped a red card for a tackle on Sadio Mane. Just minutes before he scored, he was shown a yellow after he took Mane down. Naby Keita tripped by Ricardo Pereira, and Klopp felt that should have been a penalty.
I really don't understand it, why you ask me that, because I'm not a referee. No. So we ask him.
You're a manager and you have...
No, I'm a manager, so you work pretty much maybe longer in football than I do. Maybe it would be interesting what you think about that. I'm not sure. Is it smart Is it what he's doing? I would say it's a 100% chance at least, and I think that's the situation. That's something which gives you the chance, or which tells the ref he has to give a red card. So because not only Sadio is through, I'm pretty sure Mo is on the other side, so we can play two versus Schmeichel. But again, Martin Atkinson thought it's not a red card, gave a yellow card.
And if we had VAR, maybe Keita would have had a penalty as well, because he looked like his left foot was caught by Ricardo.
I don't think that you need a VAR for that, because of the best position on the pitch had the ref again. So that's it. But he doesn't want to give it. I think we agree it was a penalty.
Now, the pressure is mounting on the Chelsea head coach Maurizio Sarri this morning. The Blues suffered a shock 4-0 defeat at Bournemouth last night. It is Chelsea's heaviest league loss since 1996 and has seen them being overtaken by Arsenal on goal difference. After the game, Sarri kicked his coaching staff out of the dressing room and locked the door as he began a 1-hour inquest talking with his players, but isn't sure if he got the answers he needed.
No, I wanted only to understand why we played very well in the first half. And why, after we considered the first goal can happen, we had only to react, we had only to continue to play, we had only to continue to defend, and we reacted very badly, I think, because we reacted in the offensive phase, not as a team, but as 11 individual players, and then we stopped to defend, and so we were in trouble. I cannot understand why. I don't know if the problem are the players or it's my fault. I am not able to motivate this team, these players.
That's the type of stuff that gets you sacked. The admission that you can't motivate the players.
Well, he wants to get
He did
sacked.
say, I'm not sure if it's the players though. It's more likely them.
But as soon as you say that, the board have to step in, because they're like, you're literally telling us you can't do your job. You've said it now. We have grounds to sack you. We probably will be able to wriggle off paying you the massive compensation that your contract demands. See you, Maurizio.
Hard to see a way back from, isn't it?
Who's he gonna get rid of? Everybody? Because this team was good at the start of the season, right? It's not a bad team.
Started the season very well, went unbeaten for a long period of time at the start of the year. I would like to have seen what happened in that 1-hour inquest when he locked the dressing room door and kicked all the staff out.
The fact that he kicked the staff out is a bit odd. Does he have trust issues with them as well as the players?
Maybe, yeah.
Must do. Also as well, I know he kind of just gets by eating whatever he eats on the sideline. I just imagine that once the full-time whistle goes, he goes to smoke about a full 20 pack.
Oh.
Whether or not he was smoking in
Is
the
he not
dressing room
allowed what you call it? What are they called? Vape.
Nicotine
vape.
patches?
No,
You're not allowed to vape?
I don't think you're allowed to vape on the sideline either.
Can he not secretly vape?
I can't imagine a vaporizer does it for Maurizio Sarri. He's a hardcore.
He wants the tar,
nicotine,
and the poison.
lover. He is a proper
Do
Italian.
you get nicotine from the vape, right?
I think apparently it's a very small amount. That apparently just chewing on whatever he chews on is much better. And I think what he's chewing on
Are nicotine patches.
Are you sure about that?
The souls of dead children.
Well, I was going to say it's actual cigarettes, but
all right, okay.
Chewing tobacco.
I presume it's chewing tobacco, but I had seen somewhere it kind of lost in translation that he was actually eating cigarettes.
Oh wow, that would be amazing.
Imagine how
Blues cracked up.
Imagine how off-putting that'd be if you're sitting there in a dressing room, the door is locked, and your manager is furiously eating cigarettes.
Bits of stuff.
You know
Across the
that file photo of Homer Simpson when he's got 1,000 cigarettes in his mouth?
Yeah.
Yes.
Someone posted that yesterday and was like, sorry right now.
Yeah.
And it was the most perfect thing ever. He was probably finished when, after Hazard got a goal last week, he asked in the post-match interview was, did the manager's comments motivate you? That said you weren't giving enough. And he just laughed at it. In fairness, I don't care what the manager says.
Right.
And it was pretty much the writing was on the wall at that point. Once you've lost the best player in the dressing room, it's hard to see a way back from.
It's like one of these very immature relationships that all the dirty laundry is being kind of aired on Facebook, where there's someone who's like,
Does this happen?
It used to happen certainly when Facebook was in its pomp. You'd be like, oh, there's some trouble here. It's like, oh, F me life and XOXO, and then all the comments would be like, hope you're okay, hon.
David Luiz is going right back. Hope you're okay, hon.
That's basically Eden Hazard and Maurizio Sarri right now. And it's hard to know who's more of a Facebook hon.
I think they're both Facebook Huns. Speaking of Facebook Huns, actually, no, I'll distance myself from that one. Neymar will miss PSG's Champions League tie against Manchester United. The Brazilian has suffered a metatarsal injury earlier this month. The French champions say they have opted to take a conservative treatment approach with him, so he'll be sidelined for up to 10 weeks. PSG travel to Old Trafford for the first leg of their last 16 tie on the 12th of February. The return is on the 6th of March. Now, the former Scotland boss Gordon Strachan believes modern players are incapable of taking constructive criticism. Strachan being linked with a return to the Scottish Premiership with Hibs. That follows the abrupt departure of Neil Lennon. Lennon left the club by mutual consent after a fallout with the striker Florian Kamberi. Reports suggest a heated row between the pair during a recent team meeting saw Kamberi storm out and go to the CEO to complain about Lennon's behaviour. The former Celtic boss was then put under investigation by the club for his conduct, and he subsequently left by mutual consent. Strachan feels players are too soft. He's quoted in the Scottish Sun today as saying, "It seems like someone has got sacked for raising their voice and telling a player straight, for doing something you see in every business. You'll hear voices raised in offices across the country. It's nothing. And I thought footballers wanted to be told the truth. You're always hearing them say, 'I just want my manager to be straight with me,'" Strachan said. "But it's like what Jack Nicholson said to Tom Cruise. You can't handle the truth. You give modern day players the truth and they crumble. What they actually want is a nice truth." In rugby, Ireland have been forced to change their plans for training today due to the weather. The Ireland training session has been moved from Maynooth to Lansdowne Road, after which the team will be named. It's expected Robbie Henshaw will be included at full-back when the squad is announced for the game with England. It will likely be one of two changes from the side that defeated New Zealand in November. Conor Murray set to return to scrum half, having missed that game with a neck injury. Josh van der Fleer tipped to remain in the back row ahead of Sean O'Brien. Now, Joe Schmidt has been on the receiving end of some verbal barbs this week. He was labelled boring by one of the England coaches. Schmidt feels the English will do their talking, though, on the pitch.
There'll be more than grenades. There'll be full tanks and full shells landing on the Aviva. You know, they've got a super team, England, and I think they improved through November. They'll improve further with the guys they've got coming back into the squad. So, you know, I think people will be pretty excited to see the outcome of that, and I'll be pretty nervous.
Now, the GAA's Director General Tom Ryan also making headlines today. He's quoted after saying they were bullied into making Páirc Uí Chaoimh available for the Liam Miller tribute match. The association were at the scene of controversy when they refused to host the fundraiser initially. They claimed it couldn't be permitted due to the GAA rules on the use of their grounds for other sports. After massive public pressure, the GAA relented and staged the game at the Cork venue. Despite noting the cause being worthwhile, Ryan remains unhappy with the situation. He wrote in his annual report, "As a governing body charged with trying to uphold standards, we should not be in the business of finding ways around our own rules. We found a way around our own rules. That is something I am still very uncomfortable with." Now, an underwater search for Emiliano Sala's plane will take place this week after debris was found on a beach. Seat cushions discovered near Certainville by French authorities. The Air Accidents Investigation Branch has identified an area of 4 square nautical miles that they will search this week. Investigators believe the 2 seat cushions pictured came from the aircraft. The Cardiff City footballer has been missing since the 21st of January after his plane disappeared from radar near the Channel Islands. Police had initially called off the search for the footballer, but a private fund was started and more than €300,000 was raised. The search will resume later this week.
All right. Is that a Gryffindor top you're wearing?
Gryffindor? No.
No, it is Gryffindor colours.
Spain.
Is it?
Yeah.
Ah, well.
Gryffindor. What, Harry Potter?
Yeah.
No. I bought a Spain top before the World Cup thinking that, you know what, they had a brutal start to this.
What a stupid
The head coach leaving. You know, I'm going to get behind Spain. And the top didn't arrive until after they'd been knocked out.
Okay, well, it was, it's a moment.
Tried to get some wear out of it.
Moment of history. Spain are red, though, right? Have they just changed to the wine, or were they always, was their training gear always this colour?
I think it was always this colour.
Was it?
Yeah. Well, the jersey is not red.
Yeah,
it's not like blood red.
It's kind blood of orange red. It's Seville red. Castilian.
Are Gryffindor not purple and yellow?
No, absolutely not. They're that colour.
Oh, really?
They're red and yellow.
Wasn't a big Harry Potter fan. Didn't really get the hype around it.
It's a disgusting thing to say.
Really?
Yeah. I'm personally offended.
We should talk a bit about Liverpool. Owen thinks that...
what do I think?
That Man City might be choking a bit more than them is the actual accurate bit. So I don't misrepresent them at the moment. Do you feel the same? Are Liverpool choking? Did they choke last night? The chance to go 7 points up at home against not a great team.
They complained about the snow, which is a fair enough complaint, and there were 2 decisions that went against them.
Is the snow a fair enough complaint?
No.
Was it not the same for both teams?
Yeah.
Is it not the stereotypical, actually, it's exactly the same for both teams?
I hate to make the excuse that they scored too early, but they probably scored a little bit too early. I don't think they're going to choke. I think they're probably mentally tougher than they were. Of all the bottle jobs we've seen from teams, I wouldn't have thought 1-1 was a bottle job. Like, it was relatively predictable that it wouldn't be a straightforward night for them. Midweek Premier League games tend to be a bit of a leveller. We see kind of odd results in midweek Premier League games. And Johnny Ward called it on last night's Off the Ball. He was predicting that Leicester would cause them problems.
Yeah, he predicted Leicester would win, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah, he said they'd cause them problems, and then he got braver in his prediction to Leicester will win the game.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think it's a choke job. Yet. That's not to say it won't be.
What constitutes a bottle job?
Not winning it from here, surely. Come on, best team.
5 point lead.
5 point lead, it's a big lead.
It's sizable, but
that can come back down to 2 before they play their next game, because City played before them, so it could be even tighter.
Yeah, like it all depends on what Manchester City do. Like Liverpool have dropped 11 points now at this stage of the season. How many more are they going to drop between now and the end of the season? They'll probably drop another 7, 8, 9 at least. But like Manchester City have really shown up this week that they're probably not going to go on this incredible run that some of us suspected they might do. That, the fact that they've gone 10 hours without conceding a goal up until the first goal they conceded the other night against Newcastle, allied with the fact that they seem to be firing up front, as we've seen in all competitions over the last couple of weeks. So
they're winning the games as well that you wouldn't have thought that they had the mettle to win in previous years. I think Leicester are the first team outside the top 6 to take points off them this season. So that says a lot about the Liverpool being able to win the games you would think they would win.
And don't let this infect the system now. All right, couple of quick comments for you. Park Fahari says, Nathan White returns from retirement to destroy England. Rob Hardigan says, you lads are hilarious when it comes to Liverpool. Dying for a choke story. It was the first point dropped to a team outside the top 6. Injuries and illness in the camp. Yeah. Bit of perspective, please.
I used that shield to hide behind, so you can have it.
You're Mr. Perspective for us this morning then, Darren. That's your new moniker. All right, let's move on and talk about the Super Bowl this week. I'm delighted to say Mike Carlson is with us to preview a game where the consensus is building, Mike, that this is going to be not quite a cakewalk for the Patriots, but I haven't seen anybody who I respect predict that the Rams are going to win just yet. What's going on?
Well, it's a tough one because when the line first came out right after the conference championship games, the Rams were favorites by 1.5. And I thought that sounded about right to me. And so much money came in on the Patriots immediately, like all of New England and a good part of America saying, what, you're going to give us the Patriots and points? And so the line overnight switched to 1.5 to the Patriots, and it's now snuck up to 2 points to the Rams now, the Patriots -2. I'm not quite sure. I think a lot of that's recency bias, given that the Rams were so lucky to get into this game and had so many problems with New Orleans, and the Patriots looked so impressive in the first half against Kansas City, dominating like they had against San Diego. Like against Los Angeles Chargers, and in the second half to keep coming back when Kansas City put the pressure on, and then of course that great drive to win the game at the end. So I think that's what it is. To me, the game really looks like a toss-up and a close one either way. Although if one team were going to run away with it, you would think that would probably have to be the Rams.
That's interesting, because I actually was thinking that there's a slight case in terms of the build-up here that reminds me a little bit of when Carolina were in the Super Bowl and the occasion was too big for Cam Newton straight from the start. From that first snap, it's fumbled and he gets it back, but it's like, oh, what's going on here? And he just was not himself. I wonder, is there any possibility that happens to Jared Goff?
It's possible, and I think that's probably the main reason why the Patriots are favorites. They've been here before. Who's going to bet against Tom Brady at the end of a close game? And Goff is still seen as a automaton would be too harsh a word, but as being a product of Sean McVay's coaching. And I think one of the things you will see for sure is that the way the Patriots have played with 8 players, sometimes 9, up at the line of scrimmage, not showing who's going to be rushing, who's going to be dropping back into coverage. They will continue that for sure because they don't want to give Sean McVay the information of what kind of defense they're sitting in while McVay is still talking in Goff's ear. And we know that he tends to keep talking right till the moment they cut that microphone off. So Goff gets a little help that way. And what we've seen from him is he's a great passer when he's got time, and particularly when he's got time and he can concentrate on his first read. And it's when you make him go to second reads, he then has a tendency to wait too long because he sort of has to see the receiver coming open before he lets go of the ball, or else dump it off to Gurley or CJ Anderson coming out of the backfield. And that's going to be, to me, the challenge for New England. They have to stop Brandon Cooks, obviously. They know what he can do from first because he played there last year. But he takes the top off of defenses, and they've been vulnerable to that to an extent all season. The more player, if you double team him, you're taking someone away from the rest of your coverage. And I think what you've got is a kind of mix with Jared Goff of Phillip Rivers and Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes had a bit of inexperience, you saw, in that Kansas City game where, he didn't react necessarily to the Patriots changing things up. And Rivers, of course, is a pocket passer the way that Goff is. And what you saw against Rivers was the Patriots were concentrating on keeping the edges set so that Melvin Gordon or Austin Eckler couldn't get outside. They like to dump the ball to them outside. They like to get him outside to run quickly, and that's exactly what the Rams want to do with Gurley in particular. C.J. Anderson's kind of the wild card because he reminds me of Ray Rice, and Ray Rice tore the Patriots up in the playoffs a few years ago when Baltimore upset them.
We've seen over the past couple of years, Mike, how much of an effort it is to get to the Super Bowl and how much of an investment of emotion in terms of plays, in terms of putting your entire life's work into this one season. And that's obviously something that Sean McVay has done. We've seen it over the past couple of years when that sort of tailed off in the following season with the likes of the Carolina Panthers, the likes of the Atlanta Falcons. Do you think the Los Angeles Rams have more of a staying power than some of those one-hit wonders, I want to call them, in the Super Bowl, despite the fact that they actually didn't win the Super Bowl when they got there?
That's going to be an interesting question because they've spent a lot of money in the last 2 years on older players, star players, and between age and salary cap, they're going to have a hard time keeping that core together. In Ndamukong Suh, Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, Donald will have to be paid. Obviously, Whitworth on the offensive line is 35 or 36, so that's going to be a difficult task for them. And in a sense, they've built the team in almost the opposite way of the Patriots, who, I think they'll lose Trent Brown, who's probably the best player in this game that nobody ever talks about, the Patriots left tackle. They'll probably lose him this year to a big contract, but they'll have somebody, probably Isaiah Wynn, who they drafted last year and then got hurt, ready to come in and take his place. And they'll fill spots with a lot of undrafted guys. And I think it's not hugely original of me to say this, but I think Aaron Donald is probably the key to the game and how the Patriots try to cope with him because he can take a lot of things away. And my guess is, although everybody says, the Patriots ran the ball in the 2 wins in the playoffs, they threw the ball an awful lot, mostly short, controlled passes that came off the running game, but they ran the ball in a slightly different way in each game. And I think they'll do that again because the best way to cope with Aaron Donald, almost the only way, is to run at him. If you run at him, you take his movement away from him. He becomes like an offensive player. He becomes the defensive player. The advantage a pass rusher has over the pass blockers, the pass rusher knows what he wants to do, and the pass blocker becomes the defensive player having to react. If you run right at Aaron Donald, you put him in that position of reacting. So if you're going to double team him, if he lines up inside of Trent Brown, I'm sure they'll double team him, and they'll leave Gronkowski to block Dante Fowler, which is a matchup that I would like. If you pay too much attention to Donald, then Sue can kill you one-on-one inside. And during the week, there was this little conversation that Belichick had about Wade Phillips, the defensive coordinator, who's been there before, and he's been around a long time. He's older than Bill. His dad was a coach in the NFL. And Bill said, Wade is still doing the same things he did 30 years ago, which is basically true, but he's changed it as he's had to. It's the same 3-4 defense he played when he was the defensive coordinator with the Bills back in the early 90s. And Bill, obviously, with the Giants, had them in the Super Bowl. But ideally, he would have one rusher, which was Bruce Smith on that team, and then 2 guys who occupy blockers, which was Phil Hansen and Ted Washington. Well, here he only has one guy who occupies blockers, really, which is Michael Brockers, and the other guys, Sue and Donald are both one-gap rushers. Ideally, they want to rush. They want to rush in. Sue doesn't really like playing that nose tackle spot where he's supposed to just hold up and get two guys. So if you double team both of them, you're playing into their hands. And if you single team Sue, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to a lot of stuff. So that, to me, is where the game could be won and lost, as well as the matchup of Aqib Talib, which again everybody in Atlanta and around whatever the football watching world is knows that he's going to be man-to-man on Julian Edelman. And Wade likes to play man-to-man. If you play zone against New England, you're inviting trouble, as we saw with the Chiefs in the winning drive 2 weeks ago. But I would guess that they're going to play man-to-man on Edelman, and they're going to play zone on the other half of the field. For the most part. No one does everything the same on every play, but that's going to be their basic strategy. They might put a man on Gronk. They might put a linebacker on him. The problem for the Rams is that behind that front three, their linebackers are all very small. They're not really run stuffers. And if you can get past them, your running game can have a lot of success.
Do both teams have problems at linebacker then? Because everybody says the way to attack New England is precisely that, get your fast guys on their slow linebackers.
Yeah, New England's problem is the linebackers aren't so great in pass coverage. The Rams linebackers are fine that way. They're quick. Mark Barron was a safety. They can cover tight ends. But the Patriots, Van Noy can run a bit. Hightower has lost a step from his injury last year, and it's really obvious that he has, which is why they play so much of the game in sub packages with 5 or even 6 defensive backs. And Patrick Chung plays an awful lot of linebacker, as it were, for them to cover tight ends. And last week or 2 weeks ago, they had J.C. Jackson, the rookie cornerback, covering tight ends and playing up at the line of scrimmage. So yeah, it's a fascinating kind of chess match. And although Bill's kind of the thought of as the master of all this, McVay, who's exactly half his age, is probably like the most interesting young thinker in the game, innovator in the game. And, I'm really curious to see what they come up with, because I'm sure both teams are going to do things that we haven't seen, certainly in the last 3 weeks.
Does any of the hangover from the championship game matter? The whole fact that they'll feel a little bit fortunate to have got that call. They've had to answer questions about it all week. McVay let a little nugget slip in a piece with Peter King about the fact that he gets texts from Bill Belichick when he does well, a little attaboy, it's okay. There's a minor weird power dynamic going on there. Does any of that off-field stuff matter at all?
Well, it doesn't seem to bother Nickel Roby-Coleman, does it? He came out trash-talking the Patriots right from the start, talking about how he hated them when he played in Buffalo. And no, basically, I think that gets put aside. If you're a player and you get a lucky break, and I think this is true in any team sport, you don't concentrate on the fact that you didn't really deserve the win. You figure you earned the win anyway. And the Rams are telling themselves they would have won even without the call, which is not quite true, but but they did intercept Breeze in the overtime and went down for the win. So in that sense, they know that they earned it, and they're not going to worry about the calls. What you can expect, because the NFL is nothing if not a knee-jerk reaction, public relations oriented league, is that they're going to call pass interference very tightly in this game. And I mentioned J.C. Jackson against Kansas City. He was the only player they called pass interference on, and he had 2 calls plus a holding call, which was exactly the same total as he had the whole season. He matched in that one game. And I have the feeling that you're going to see a lot more of those calls coming against quite a few more of the players. I don't think they'll necessarily target Nickel Roby-Coleman, but
he needs to be careful.
But if I were him, I wouldn't be grabbing on and going along for the ride.
Yeah, I also have a feeling that'll happen in the first half, and then nothing will be called in the second half, just to make sure that the crappy first half isn't the thing that people remember in the aftermath. Because if they called every penalty, the game would be terrible. It would last for ages, and it would actually get really boring. So
yeah, and that's been my point for years, is they've turned the two really crucial calls that change games: offensive holding in the line and pass interference, defensive holding and pass coverage. They've turned them into total judgment calls. The rule used to be simple: if the ball was in the air, you couldn't touch the guy. And in fact, if he was past the chuck zone, when they created that 5-yard area where you could hit a receiver, you couldn't touch the guy. So if you touched him, it was pass interference. Well, then they let it go. Once you get into that, it's like the NBA, and you can call the foul anytime you feel like it, but nobody kind of knows what is or what isn't. They call it a significant advantage in the NFL, and I think that's going to be a problem. I am convinced that for the conference championship weekend, a directive went out from the NFL, like an advisory to the referees: let them play. Don't take over the game yourself. And and for the most part, I think that's what happened. And just as you say, in the second half, that becomes even more so, because nobody wants to be the guy who changes the whole game with a flag.
No, and I made the comparison with the Football World Cup in Brazil, where the games were particularly violent compared to the stuff that we would see week in, week out in the Premier League or in La Liga or any European league. And at the end of that whole process, Neymar ended up with a broken back from a kick in the back, and they were like, oh, maybe we went a little bit too far there. There's a balance to be struck between letting the teams play and actually applying the rules that everybody knows are the rules. So there was
which was with the World Cup with Holland and Spain in the final. And the English referee, was his name Judd or
Howard Webb?
Howard Webb, with the karate kick to the chest.
One of those 4-letter words. Yeah. He lost control of the game right at the beginning, and he'd handed out his yellow cards, and then he couldn't hand out the second one when he should have. So he was getting like worse fouls that he wasn't being able to penalize, because he didn't want to be the guy who sent somebody off in a World Cup final, and the game became a total joke.
Yeah, exactly. And that was, and there's a feeling that can happen, and we saw it last week or 2 weeks ago. The other thing that I just wanted to ask you briefly about the experience was that I would have said that the Eagles last year would have been underdogs for the precise reason that the Rams are underdogs. And so what gives me a bit of hope that maybe this won't be something that we saw with Carolina is that teams somehow can, depending on their, I don't know what it is, but some teams don't suffer the same thing. They don't suffer the fact that there's the game, there's a halftime which is an hour long, and then there's another game. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And people forget, if the Patriots and Rams had played in October or November, who would have been the favorites? Rams. If they were in LA, it would have been the Rams by 6 points. If they were in New England, it would have been close. People tend to give the Patriots that deservedly the home field advantage. But this would not be looked at as an easy game for New England then, and I don't think it is now. They got there because they are a good team. They've got huge stars on both sides of the ball. They've got game breakers, and they're strong in some of the ways that New England is weak. So I would really still be content if this game were 1.5 to the Rams. And I'm going to wind up picking the Patriots, which means they will lose. Because when I do my column on Patreon, when I do that, they always lose in the playoffs. I do very well in the regular season, and then apart from 2 years ago, I think when I was 10-1 in the playoffs, this year I'm 5-5. So it's not going to be a good playoff.
Sorry, no, you go for it.
Is it good crack to broadcast from the Super Bowl? I'm kind of interested in that, like the whole massive, like it's the biggest annual sports event in the world, and a bit of a snafu, I'm sure, to broadcast from, but also there must be a bit of crack involved.
It is, although as you can tell, I'm sitting in my office in England right now, and due to the general, I don't know what it is, the general attitude toward me. I think I haven't spent many of those Super Bowls there for the whole week. The BBC are flying me in tomorrow on Friday. And I suggested if they really wanted to save money, that they could give me a parachute, and I would parachute in on Sunday afternoon. The plane gets in around 4:00. They could just circle the stadium. I could jump out, and be part of the pregame show before the Jets drop napalm on everybody. And they decided that wasn't a great idea. But yeah, the atmosphere is great. Saturday is a fun day, in a sense, because it's very quiet. If you go to the press center, there's not going to be anyone in the press center. Radio Row, which is the most, you guys should go there at some point, because it's the most amazing zoo of just microphone after microphone after microphone, and people all yelling at the top of their voices because that's the way sports radio is done in America. And it's, you know, the crowds are usually great. You know, they've come in from both cities and elsewhere. Even in Minnesota last year, they were outside in the cold and enjoying themselves. And so on Saturday, where there really isn't a lot to do, I've already found a bar called Rira in Atlanta, not far from the stadium apparently, and that's going to be showing Ireland and England, and I'll be sitting there. We're going to bring Nat Coombs along, so we have an Englishman to act as our punching bag in that match. But that'll be my lunchtime on, which is a very civilized time to watch the rugby.
Yeah, no, totally.
You're going to need to tweet us pictures of Nat Coombs crying when we absolutely pulverise him on Saturday. One last thing, the big controversy this week, Mike, has been about Maroon 5 cancelling their press conference. I didn't realise that the halftime show act actually has a press conference during Media Week for the Super Bowl, but there's been a massive Change.org petition to them actually performing halftime in the Super Bowl due to, you know, the blackballing of Colin Kaepernick and the amount of acts that have actually pulled out before Maroon 5 were announced. It's weird that a halftime show has been spoken about this much, particularly because the act performing are so bad.
You're right, but it's not weird because everything is spoken about like that.
Sure.
The commercials that will air on the during the Super Bowl, you know, are discussions. I don't know anything about Maroon 5. My suggestion was that the halftime show should be Nick Foles 5, which they could have just created as a super group to go out there. Gladys Knight came under some, you know, criticism for doing the national anthem, which I found really unjustified. She's from Atlanta. She's one of the great singers of all time. I could listen to her all day long. I'm still going to take the under on the anthem, which currently is 1:41, I think, and that's low. Usually it's about 1:45, the over-under. So they're expecting her to go under, but I think I may still take the under there. But, you know, to me, she should be the halftime show. What's her biggest hit? Midnight Train to Georgia. Mm-hmm. She's from Atlanta. You know, it couldn't, you know, just couldn't make any more sense for her to be the halftime show. But of course, we're speaking to a different audience than me.
Yeah, for sure.
It seems that the only thing being written off more than the Los Angeles Rams this weekend are Gladys Knight's lungs.
Mike, good stuff. Thanks a million. Enjoy the whole thing.
Don't write them off. You know, it's like I'm not doing that just to cover the bases or to seem. But I really do think, you know, that this is going to be as good. We've had an amazing run of Super Bowls since I started doing them with BBC, with a 2-year hiatus for ITV in the middle of that, which included the one that wasn't a close game, the Denver-Baltimore Super Bowl in New York. But all the others have been close games and entertaining games, exciting games, you know, and I'm pretty much convinced we're going to get another one of those unless the referees make it not so.
I hope you're dead right. Enjoy it all, Mike. Thanks a million for being with us. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you Sunday.
That's Mike Carlson there. That sounds like a good trip. That's a good idea. We should go and do Radio Row for the whole week next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go. And
you know, all the players show up. Everybody shows up. Literally everybody shows up and they just wander around.
Yeah, it's almost like going to like a careers fair or something, except there's just professional athletes at every stall.
Yeah, like 106 whoever they are in the 53-man rosters, and then probably some spares just in case somebody gets injured during the week that you can call up.
Yeah, it's not exactly
40 coaches on both teams.
Yeah, you can't really protect anybody from the media onslaught that is Super Bowl week. So it really is a requirement. I think it's a requirement of being any sort of athlete of note in the NFL. You've got to have that capability of handling being notable, being very, very notable.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Well, there is that, but that was, I always look at that moment as kind of like a big indulgence in the man's own ego.
Well, do you remember when he retired? Halftime in the Super Bowl. He tweeted a picture of a golden pair of cleats, as they're called, hung up. He was hanging up his cleats. Tweeted at halftime in the Super Bowl. Yeah, 3 seasons ago in the middle of it. I was like, took a year out, came back, and is still playing. Yeah. I mean, obviously he's injured at the moment, but yeah. So I mean, well, you know, if you're going to be Marshawn Lynch, you may as well be Marshawn Lynch 24 hours a day.
Yeah, but the whole disdain for the media while using a media event to make himself more famous was kind of ironic.
I mean, I think he's got game, is how
Exactly, but don't tell me that you actually hate the media events. He loves that stuff.
Mike will be back with us on Monday morning after the Super Bowl from Atlanta. Will he still be up? He'll still be up.
I think we're going to do a quick pre-rec before we come on air on Monday morning, just to allow him to get some sleep before he flies back to the UK.
I love the BBC Super Bowl show. I think it's great because there's no ads.
Yeah.
They don't have Romo and commentary, so you have to flick because they get the world feed. Generally, they get the world feed unless they've changed it this year. So.
Then they often bring in Martin O'Neill in for a chat.
I wonder who is going to be this year.
I don't know. You're taking Monday off. Is that for the Super Bowl?
I cannot confirm or deny.
Do you do like a big Super Bowl shindig?
No. You can't have a shindig when you've got because if I did, the kids would be down watching it with me. That would not be much fun.
No, it wouldn't be ideal.
Here, have a chicken wing. Don't drink the beer.
What? So it's wings and beer.
Well,
that's on the menu.
Yeah.
You're gonna. You said it as if you're trying to hide something. Are you going to use? Should have got Donnacha Ryan's chicken wings.
Have a chicken wing?
I presume he does. Like, I mean, his goujon sounded pretty delicious.
Yeah, you just need syrupy stuff. A bit of maple syrup, marinade,
barbecue sauce,
slow cook, whatever you want.
Whatever you want yourself. Yeah. It's
peri.
Like
two different types.
So you it's kind of like a Super Bowl party with just one person.
Sounds great, doesn't it?
Just you, wings, and Mike Carlson on the BBC.
That sounds like a pretty heavenly late night Sunday, early Monday morning.
Just did it wrong.
Let's move to Liverpool and Dominic King in a minute. First, Andy Mitten joined Johnny Ward and Kevin Kilbane on the football show last night. The lads got talking to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and whether or not he'll be kept on as Manchester United head coach at the end of the season.
Because if they listened to some of the online fans, they'd have no players left. They would have all been sold. Marcus Rashford at times this season would have been sold because people have said he's only getting a look in because he's a Mancunian, because he's a United fan. He's actually a very good player who is now confident and playing in his preferred position. Every player, as you know, Kevin, has bad times. Lukaku's had a bad time. Sanchez has had a pretty wretched 12 months. Do I think he's finished as a player? No, I don't. I think these people should be given the benefit of the doubt. Even Fred, £52 million. He's done nothing so far. I don't think we should sell him. Lindelof, a year ago, some United fans were saying this guy's a disgrace. He should never have been bought. He should never be near this famous red shirt. They're not saying it now. I've got emails in my inbox from 6 weeks ago saying we should get protests. I'd be quite funny if I replied to some of them and say, OK, Leicester on Sunday, let's get the protest going against the club. You won't find any support for it.
Just briefly, if you were to call it now, will he be the manager at the start of next season?
Yes.
Kev?
I'm still undecided. I'm still 50-50. I am, honestly. Because I think if a big name were to come up, I still think at the moment, I think he'd jump ahead of him.
I don't know. Andy had a look of a man who knows something about something there. He definitely was like, if he's saying yes now at this stage, I think it's more than likely going to happen. I don't think it's anywhere near 50-50. So I think Andy's very well sourced at Manchester United. So, you can see why he would be favoured at this point. Let's move on because we want to talk about Liverpool last night. Dominic King, the Northwest football reporter with the Daily Mail, is with us now. Dominic, good morning. See, how you doing?
Morning. I'm very well. How are you?
Good, yeah. I guess there was always going to be a bit of a wobble from a Liverpool perspective, and this is not the worst wobble that's ever happened to a team. You know, they've extended their lead after the round of midweek fixtures in the Premier League. So the fact that Man City have lost isn't irrelevant. It's actually unbelievably important, and that changes the context of how Liverpool fans should feel about this game. But in the moment, it feels like a lost opportunity.
Yeah, I think you're right, because everybody just made the assumption that that Liverpool would now be 7 points clear, and they've capitalised on what happened with Manchester City and Newcastle on Tuesday night. But you know, I think people should realise, you know, it's very, very dangerous to make assumptions at this time of year, because everybody assumed Man City were going to beat Newcastle. So there's going to be all sorts of there's going to be twists before the end of the season. Both teams are going to drop points at unexpected places. It's just the nature of a title race. It's just the nature of what happens when pressure is on people, and the striving to get the biggest prize there is in English football. So listen, that point could actually be very, very important at the final outcome. And it shouldn't be lost in the fact that Liverpool could have lost that game. Could easily have lost that game last night. And there was a couple of scares in the second half with needed last gasp saves. So, point wasn't ideal, but it's not the end of the world by any means.
The psychic fear that so many Liverpool fans that I'm mates with and that get in touch with us on the show is so heavy and laden down with history that I wonder if stuff like the things that happened in the game last night, ordinarily if you were a manager you would try and brush past them and say the penalty decision, the red card, they're just bad decisions and don't worry about them lads, they're going to even out over the course of the season. But if you're Klopp and you know and you can sense that in the city and on the terraces, in the seats rather, that there is just this kind of fear of the burden of history, do you actually just start turning this into look, they're out to get us? They're trying to stop us here. Do you try and foment some kind of underdog, us against them mentality?
No, I think if Liverpool are going to win the league, it will be down to Jurgen Klopp. Every time every press conference that I've been at with him this season, he's got the air of a man who's got absolute total trust in his team. He's won 2 titles with Borussia Dortmund, so he knows what it takes, what is going to be needed. You're dead right to talk about the nervousness because I wrote a piece about it last night. You could sense in the ground it was edgy. It wasn't sort of enjoy. I don't think people turned up ready to enjoy themselves last night. I think it was sort of apprehensive. It was like we need to be 7 points clear now. This has got to happen. And when things didn't start going to plan, you could hear groans and you could hear the impatience and whatever. But listen, I totally understand it because the weight of history is huge, and this is the prize that Liverpool fans have wanted to win more than anything else. And every season that goes by without them winning it, it adds to the frustration, it adds to the impatience, and I just think it's going to be nervy until the end. But then, if they do get over the line, imagine what the party will be like.
One of the concerns had been that Liverpool haven't gone through a bad patch or whatever that may be. But to be fair, Dom, it's been a month since they've really comprehensively won a match in any competition when they beat Arsenal 5-1 on the 29th of December. So this probably has been their bad patch, hasn't it? And they've come out of the other side relatively unscathed. I know they lost to Manchester City. They got dumped out of the FA Cup, which I don't care about. But it is a result like last night where they're drawing the games rather than getting beaten, which might be pivotal.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to point out about the team that played last night. I know they had 10 days off or 11 days off in between fixtures, and they'd been to Dubai for a bit of sunshine. But there were a few issues last night in terms of fitness, players not being absolutely at their best. And Jordan Henderson was carrying a little issue in his calf. That he had to soldier through. Virgil van Dijk had been ill in the build up to the game, and then you're missing Milner suspended, Oxlade-Chamberlain still not back, Gomez, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Fabinho was still carrying an issue in his hamstring, which was why he couldn't start. Dejan Lovren still not ready. So when you start listing players like that, and you can see it hasn't been great, but he's been trying to sort of muddle on through, and the players have, as you said, if this is the blip, and they've managed to extend the lead while they're in the blip, then doesn't that augur well for what's going to come in the later months? So
given the faith that Klopp has in his team and the fact that there are some players to come back from injury, was there any sense, any talk given to signing a replacement fullback in this window? Is it too late now to just buy somebody?
No, they were never going to sign someone. With hindsight, would they have waited a week or 10 days before letting Nathaniel Clyne go to Bournemouth? Possibly. But Klopp was explaining to us that you can't foresee these things. They'd made a decision. You have to sort of be fair to people because Clyne wasn't going to play, so it made sense for him to go at the time. What they couldn't have foreseen was Milner getting a suspension, Trent Alexander-Arnold getting injured and Gomez's injury taking a little bit longer to heal. But in terms of incomings, no, it was never on the cards. They won't do any business today, and I don't think there'll be anybody going out at all. The only one that's left would be Lazar Markovic, but there's little interest in him at all.
In retrospect, should they have signed, or do you think the only thing they should have done was just not let Klein go, or until the end? Like, would there have been any sense in spending 20 million quid on Matt Doherty or somebody like that, for example, to get you through to the end of the season and go, look, it's going to win the league for us. That's all we need.
Yeah, Liverpool wouldn't do that. They wouldn't make a sort of short-term stopgap signing. For that, they've got a particular way of doing the business. They only want to add players that are going to be long-term investments, and no, he wouldn't do a stopgap. There was a few questions asked the night that Lovren got injured at Wolves, and the replies back that we were getting more, but he's not signing anybody just for 1 or 2 games. So he's made his decision. As I said to you, he's got huge faith in the squad, and once he's got everybody fit, I think that they've got one of the best squads in Europe, and nobody would dispute that.
Yes, okay, so fair enough. They're happy enough with that. The way the fixtures are coming is going to be interesting. Next weekend, City play Arsenal on the Sunday, and then Liverpool play West Ham on the Monday. So that's going to be another opportunity for them to respond to a different challenge this time, where the gap gets closed and they have to reassert it. But at least it's West Ham away, and it's not a massive, horrible fixture for them the way West Ham are playing at the moment.
Yeah, you say that, but I think that'll be a very difficult game for Liverpool. I mean, they're a club that needs West Ham are a club that needs a bit of a boost with the TV cameras there, and Monday night under the lights, it'll be a huge crowd. They'll want to see something. They want to see a response, particularly to the back-to-back defeats at Wimbledon and Wolves. They'll be demanding a response there. So it'll be very, very difficult. But then we're assuming that Man City are going to beat Arsenal, and you just don't know what you're going to get with Arsenal, do you? I can't see Man City having a run where they go on 8 or 9 games of straight wins. I just think there's a little bit of unpredictability about them. And the same with Liverpool, I should add. I don't think Liverpool are going to sort of rattle off 6 or 7 wins in a row, particularly with the fixtures that they've got. I think it's just a question of holding the nerve and remembering what they've done to get them into the place that they are now.
Well, given that, is there any hope for Spurs, who are just 7 points behind at this stage?
I think Spurs have been absolutely brilliant. And if Harry Kane was still around, or back sooner, you wouldn't be too ready to rule them out. I just think that again, their injuries will creep up on them at some point. If Tottenham finish in the top 4 this season, they've done a brilliant job, and the fact that they've been in a position where they've been spoken about as title challengers, I think sort of highlights what great players they've got and what a brilliant manager they have.
All right, Dom, great stuff. Thanks a million for taking the call this morning. Cheers.
Pleasure, no problem at all, gents.
It's Dominic King there talking to us about the performance last night from Liverpool. I don't think there's any need to panic, really. I mean, I know we were talking earlier on about the choking, but it's way too early for that. And when the dust settles today/tomorrow and they start preparing for next weekend's games, they'll be like, last week we were 4 points ahead, this week we're 5 points ahead. That's better, right? Like,
the thing is, we've spoken about the defensive personnel there, and they need to get them back and fully fit in terms of a back 4 ASAP. Like, they conceded 5 goals in their last 3 games at this point. But they conceded 5 goals in their previous 16 games up until that point. So it's clearly falling off a cliff in some respect in terms of their defensive solidity. That being said, their defensive solidity was going along all-time Premier League records up with Chelsea in Pete Jose era a couple of weeks back. So you couldn't expect them to continue it all the way through. And also, I think it's probably it probably reflects happier on Liverpool that this is kind of a personnel-based issue, if we can even call it an issue, that it's not really a systemic failure, that it's just the fact that the likes of Gomez and Trent Alexander-Arnold aren't available, that they aren't playing, that's kind of led to what kind of seems to be a sort of systemic failure when it's actually not, like the goal they conceded last night, for example. What's the chance of Jose Mourinho taking the Chelsea job? Is he who you turn to as a temporary short-term? Come on in, Jose. You can lick this. Eden Hazard's really going to respond to you. Well, like, the Chelsea Football Club is just one of the strangest entities in the world, in any walk of life. So I would have said no chance whatsoever, but there's every chance that they do something idiotic like bringing Jose Mourinho back. Yeah. It's like if Liverpool Football Club was run like Chelsea at the moment, not only would they have not failed to sign a replacement for Nathaniel Klein, they probably would have signed Paul Konchesky. They would have done something stupid. They would have signed a replacement, but it would have been something stupid in the short term. Well, Konchesky wouldn't be short term, would he? He'd be no term at all. Yeah, all right. That's our lot today. We've had an amazing competition running for you this week. A pair of tickets with thanks to Glenisk to watch Ireland against England. They're premium tickets. Good seats in the Aviva for the Six Nations game. Thousands of you entered. We've randomly picked one winner. So congratulations to Aisling Stano, who entered on Twitter, and she is taking her husband Aidan, her gorgeous husband, at Aidan Astano 21. So well done to Aisling and to Aidan. You're heading along to the game courtesy of Glenisk. Well done yourselves. And yeah, so that's it. Some quick comments for you. Higuain's going to be another Chelsea striker failure, just like Shevchenko, Torres, Morata, Giroud. It has been a graveyard really for good strikers. Yeah, I was just about to say. Does that mean Didier Drogba was the greatest footballer of all time to survive whatever curse there was there? He wasn't really brought in at the peak of his powers, though. He was brought in as somebody who could improve, and he did improve. Like they're in very different situations, all those players, to what Didier Drogba was in to the point when he came in. Also, Didier Drogba had far more of a killer instinct than any of those did, and it probably comes from the fact that he was hungry to reach the very top level of football, whereas all those players probably reached the top level. And like it seems weird to say that about someone like Giroud. Like Giroud was brought in to be a sub. I don't think he's in the same list there. And then Donnacha is so sound, says Fergal Carney. Mad to believe he'd take the head off you in a game. Yeah, but all the silent assassins are always like that. Just ask Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Tomorrow morning, 7:45, Adrian Owen and Alan Quinlan looking forward to the weekend's football GAA and the rugby too. I can't believe it's Thursday of a Six Nations week where everybody assumes we're just going to kill England. All we've got to do is show up. Except for you naysayer. I don't know, I'm just a little bit worried. Surely this game gets closer. That's the whole point. You get a bit more worried. No, like get used to being superior. He's from Kerry. See you tomorrow.